So I think basically if you're interested in a kind of combination of social sciences, or you're interested in the social sciences kind of very broadly, then this is definitely a course that could be kind of for you, because we've got aspects of law, economics, policy, business, also kind of politics as well. So if you can't really choose what you want to decide at uni, this is a really great course.
Hello everyone, welcome to Cambridge from the Inside. We're here with a new guest today. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi everyone, I'm Sam. So I work at the Department of Land Economy, where I basically do all of the outreach and communications work. So that's anything from organising the open days to managing the website, social media, that kind of stuff. So anything kind of public facing from the department, that's kind of me.
Nice. Yeah, it's cool to have another outreach comms joining us today. As Sam was saying, we're going to be talking about land economy and applying for land economy and everything about the application process. So firstly, who would you say would be most interested in studying land economy?
So I think basically if you're interested in a kind of combination of social sciences, or you're interested in the social sciences kind of very broadly, then this is definitely a course that could be kind of for you, because we've got aspects of law, economics, policy, business, also kind of politics as well. So if you can't really choose what you want to decide at uni, this is a really great course. And I think in terms of kind of the UK broadly, like land economy is, well, one of the reasons land economy is so special is because it is so broad. I mean, often when you get to university, you're kind of stuck studying one thing, whereas land economy is kind of many things.
Yeah.
And then I suppose there's like another way to look at it as well, which is if you're interested in kind of the environment kind of around us, but you don't necessarily want to study something like environmental science or earth sciences or geography, then land economy could really be something for you, because it's basically all to do with the way in which kind of we as humans interact with the environment, both the natural and the built environment. So it's kind of more human focused. So yeah, I would say like lots of people, potentially a lot more than the number of people who actually apply would be interested.
Nice. And for anyone who doesn't know, is there a succinct way to describe what a land economy is?
Yeah, so I kind of say it's an interdisciplinary social science degree, but all to do with the environment. So that means anything from kind of climate law and environmental law through to housing policy and kind of planning issues, right through to kind of economics, so real estate finance, real estate economics, and kind of urban economics, that sort of thing. But it's kind of many other things apart from that. But I think that's a kind of like broad synopsis of the degree.
Yeah, some people have said that it's it's a degree that kind of merges economics, law, and environment. How accurate would you say that is?
Yeah, I think really accurate. I mean, obviously we don't cover the more kind of physical sciences of the environment, but everything that you would study in the degree is underpinned by a kind of relevance to the environment. So I think that's a really great way. And then law and economics obviously are the kind of bedrock of kind of what it is just on a practical level. So definitely, yeah.
So if someone can choose between going into one of those three areas, land economy is a good way to be able to do all of them at the same time.
Yeah, I definitely say so. So like when I talk to kind of current land economy students, when I sort of talk about what other universities and other degrees they went for, it's always a combination. It's like, oh, I applied for economics and geography here, or law and economics here, or kind of some kind of combination of those. So yeah.
Nice. And For prospective students who are applying, what kind of super-curricular or extracurricular activities would be good for them to do if they're applying for land economy?
So I think pretty much anything that you can do outside of your studies that would help, either just on kind of a practical level, but also kind of more subject focused. So anything from kind of attending court. So, if you're just a member of the public and going into a court, you can kind of see legal proceedings and how the law kind of works in action, and that can be really useful. Other things like maybe getting some work experience or some work shadowing in maybe like a law firm or kind of financial institutions.
Yeah.
And then other things like kind of maybe a little internship or work experience placement in kind of a local council or some kind of government institution. All of those could be great. But I mean, don't limit yourself to that. I mean, there's the applicability of like work experience is kind of wide ranging. So yeah.
Nice. And are there, like, if you weren't able to, let's say, get work experience or an internship, are there any like books or podcasts that you'd recommend that would help applying for land economy?
Yeah, loads. So on our website, we've got two reading lists actually. So one of them is for kind of prospective students. So anyone who thinks they might be interested in studying land economy, but is not quite sure. And then we've got a second reading list, which is basically a little bit more advanced, and it's for those students. Well, it's kind of targeted at those students who've already been accepted to the course and are kind of about to study the course. So it's kind of a summer long vacation reading list. So I definitely say check those out. But again, don't limit yourself to that. I mean, there are plenty of books written about kind of land economy subjects. Any kind of trade books about kind of the law, about economics, macroeconomics, microeconomics. They're all going to be useful. And especially there's obviously been an explosion of books about kind of climate change and the environment in the last few years, and kind of loads of those would be really useful. So don't kind of limit yourself to what's on the reading list. Do feel free to kind of read around that. And then in terms of podcasts, I mean, anything which kind of touches on current affairs would I think be useful, because I mean, land economy as a degree and kind of the topics that you'd be studying, they touch on kind of really pertinent, like global issues that we're facing at the moment. Like I said, kind of climate change, but also housing affordability, homelessness, kind of issues with kind of environmental degradation, technological change. So I would say pretty much any current affairs podcast is going to give you something. So yeah, I think let yourself be guided by what you find interesting, for sure.
Nice. Yeah. And we can definitely put a link to those reading lists in the caption if you're interested. Check out the caption for those reading lists. So with regards to like A-level entry requirements, are there any specific A-level students need in order to apply for land economy?
No, so I think that's what's actually really nice about land economy, is that we don't have any subject-specific kind of requirements that a lot of other degrees do. So you could feasibly study any combination of A-levels, and that wouldn't preclude you from applying for land economy. But what I will say is that definitely some are better than others. So we'll say kind of like maths and economics and geography are kind of quite useful preparations. I think broadly, like any combination of more mathematical subjects with more essay-based subjects is actually really good. So if you've got like an A-level in history, then you've kind of got that essay notion down. But you're also never going to be able to completely avoid maths in a land economy degree. So if you've got kind of maths or physics or chemistry, something like that, that's got a bit of a quantitative element, that's going to help. But yeah, I think if you were choosing maybe the ideal combination of A-levels, probably maths, economics, and geography is going to be kind of what you're looking at. Yeah.
Nice. And with regards to kind of moving on to the personal statement, if there's no kind of specific A levels that are required, what kind of things can students write about or talk about in their personal statement?
Yes, I think when you're sort of talking about what you've learned at school and kind of how you want to apply that to your university studies, I think kind of highlighting how you think that the kind of the specific subjects you've studied would help in your kind of land economy degree is going to be kind of key. So yeah, like I said, if you studied an essay-based subject, like how has that kind of helped you to kind of frame problems? How have you kind of been writing essays in terms of kind of how has that helped you structure kind of an argument? But then equally on the kind of more math side of things, what kind of skills, maybe stats skills or kind of other things have you kind of gained from those A-level lessons? And kind of why do you think that would it kind of put you in good stead for a land economy degree?
Nice. And is it important to mention like the phrase like land economy in your personal statement? If because I don't believe many universities, if any, other universities offer land economy. So what should students do when they're applying for land economy at Cambridge, but they're applying for other different degrees at other universities?
Yes, I get this question like all the time
Yeah.
because obviously it's kind of a concern that prospective students have. What I always say is do not worry about mentioning land economy specifically. We're aware that kind of it is a unique course in the UK, and so all of the academics who are kind of assessing your application, they won't penalise you if you talk about economics or if you talk about law or if you talk about kind of any other degree. One thing I will say is that with your Cambridge application, after you submit in UCAS, you get a link to a kind of separate mini application called My Cambridge application. And in there is an optional sort of extra personal statement. And it's kind of in that area where you can feel free to talk about land economy specifically and why you're kind of motivated to study land economy specifically. But yeah, just want to drum that in that you do not have to mention land economy at all in your personal statement in UCAS.
Nice. So so whether it's the personal statement or the My Cambridge application, is it important to talk about different aspects of the land economy course, or do applicants have complete agency to take the application statement wherever they want to?
Yeah, so I think given just how broad land economy is as a subject, it would be pretty much impossible to talk about why you're interested in kind of each specific area or aspect of land economy.
Yeah.
So I think my kind of recommendation would just be maybe to focus on one or a couple of different kind of specific things that you're interested in and kind of go into a bit of depth about why it is specifically that these things kind of excite you. I mean, there's going to be people who've never encountered law before who are applying to land economy, or who've never really encountered economics in any kind of formal teaching setting. And so I don't think there's any expectation to be like an expert on these things and to sort of talk about them in really kind of great detail in the personal statement. It's more just about kind of what motivates you to want to study those things at uni.
Nice. And normally after the personal statement for a lot of subjects, there's an admissions test. Is there an admissions test for land economy?
There's no admissions test. So we used to have one. So if anybody sees online that there's still information about that, you can just ignore it because, yeah, we don't have any admissions test for land economy.
And do you have to submit any written work for land economy?
So that depends on the college. So some colleges, you don't have to submit any written work. Trinity Hall, where we are now, and some other colleges require you to submit one piece of written work, and then a couple of colleges need two. But I think I wouldn't bear that in mind too much when you're kind of choosing a college. But I think, if you've written, an essay, for instance, that you're really, really proud of and that you want to kind of bring up in the interview maybe, then you can certainly apply to one of those colleges that kind of stipulates written work as part of the application. And I know some people get a bit worried about kind of what format it needs to be in, or kind of what exactly what form that written work needs to take. But I think in those instances, it's best to kind of just get in touch with the admissions team of the particular college that you're interested in applying to, and kind of get some info there. But it's definitely not something to be kind of really scared about. It's, you could easily use something you've already written.
Yeah. So in that situation, is there like what topic should the written work, the piece of written work, be in, or would that depend on the college you're applying to?
Yeah, I think get an idea from the college first about what they're specifically wanting. I mean, it needs to have some relevance. I guess it can't just simply be like, this is what I did on holiday last year, and it's like an essay about something completely unrelated to land economy. I think the reason written work is kind of important for certain academics and certain colleges is just to get an idea of kind of your skill at handling information in that kind of essay format, and how you kind of process arguments, because there's going to be a lot of that in land economy. You're definitely not going to be able to get through a whole kind of land economy degree without writing kind of many essays. So that is definitely going to be like an important part of the kind of admissions procedure.
Nice. And just kind of taking a quick tangent onto the course, because you were saying that in land economy there's no way of avoiding maths, but then there's also like a lot of written work. But normally, like when at least when I think of maths, I don't think about writing lots of essays. So how do those two kind of merge together in land economy?
So I think if you're talking about more kind of the legal side of things, or the kind of policy and the theory, that's going to definitely be more wedded to the kind of essay format. But in terms of kind of the economic side of things, I mean, you could be sort of like, certainly within kind of the degree, you could be kind of analysing certain data to do with like spatial analysis of kind of urban areas, or kind of regional economics, or different kind of areas like that. And it's kind of using kind of the data that you've been provided with, or that you've been working with, and kind of using the essay to kind of argue a certain point, or kind of delve deeper into what the kind of numbers actually show us. So it's not like a purely econometric degree. It's kind of using the way that I would say it's trying to understand the world around us through some kind of economics kind of data. That's kind of the key to writing essays in kind of land economy.
Nice. So being able to like process large amounts of text and be able to communicate well with language and essays, but also be able to like interpret data and manipulate data. Would that be?
Exactly. Yeah. So I think it's kind of bridging those two things. So I mean, ultimately, it is a kind of social science degree. So at kind of a broad level, it's a science degree, but with elements of like kind of humanities as well. So it's a nice way. I mean, if you can't decide between kind of something more mathsy like economics, but you also love kind of something more essay based like law, again, it's kind of marrying those two things together, which is another kind of nice feature of the degree.
Nice. And say if someone's like wants to become a lawyer, and that's like their long-term ambition, and maybe they like have like a bit of interest in towards climate law, like environmental law, but I know they might think that in order to become a lawyer you have to do a law degree. Could doing land economy be a pathway into becoming a lawyer eventually?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So our undergraduate degrees, so our at Cambridge undergraduate degrees are called tripos degrees, but our tripos is we've got so successful graduates are sometimes able to get kind of part exemption for some some kind of legal training courses.
Mm.
So the Law Society and the Bar Council both kind of accredit our degree. So for sure that there is scope there for kind of graduates to go into kind of pretty much any legal field that they're kind of interested in, be that kind of on the more solicitor side or the barrister side or kind of legal adjacent organisations. That's absolutely something that the degree would kind of I would say prepare you really well for.
Yeah. And would that be like through like a conversion law course or?
Yeah, that could definitely be an option.
Yeah.
I think pretty much nothing's excluded
Okay.
after a land economy degree in terms of the legal field for sure. Yeah.
Nice. So coming back to the application process for land economy, for all courses at Cambridge, the applicants will have an interview, probably 2 interviews. What are the interviews like for land economy?
So I think broadly, in kind of, I guess, a general sense, they are going to be quite similar to other subjects. So they are going to be, the interviewers, I should say, are going to be interested in kind of your motivations to study the subject. So kind of what is it about land economy that really interests you, that's kind of made you quite passionate about the subject. Similarly, like what have you studied in school and what have you done outside of school that's kind of piqued your interest, we could say. Then there's also an element of kind of trying to track your kind of analytical and problem solving skills. So you'll be sort of presented with a problem or several problems related to land economy. So anything from economics to law to kind of policy, and kind of tasked with not necessarily sort of solving the problem, but tasked with kind of thinking through and kind of discussing the problem and all the kind of implications of that. So I think there's like a wealth of information about Cambridge interviews out there. So kind of all of that is going to be applicable. But obviously with land economy being a unique degree, it's kind of a unique experience in and of itself. So yeah.
Yeah. And like, so if I'm like a student and I've got a land economy interview coming up, I'm trying to prepare for it and kind of read into things and have conversations with maybe my peers are also applying for land economy. What kind of topics could I look into that might come up in the interview, or like what kind of things can I like focus onto that would help me prepare for a land economy interview?
Yes, I think there's kind of 2 ways of looking at it. The first is definitely just carry on with that reading kind of outside of the subject that you've kind of presumably been doing. So books and newspapers, kind of online information, online resources, podcasts, anything like that. Just basically keep doing that. Maybe even kind of read the newspaper on the morning of your interview and just kind of get a check on kind of what's happening around the UK and the world that kind of you could talk about in kind of your interview. And then the second thing is, I would say, kind of more specific to your application. Make sure that you're just kind of rereading your personal statement. Make sure that you kind of comfortable talking about things that you've written about there, because the lovely thing about Cambridge is that we're able to interview kind of every student who is successful. So that means that we are not just kind of relying on the personal statement like a lot of other universities do. And so the personal statement is really just treated as, I would say, like a jumping off point. So don't be surprised if the interviewers kind of pinpoint a certain book or a certain kind of topic that you've mentioned and kind of ask you to talk about it in a bit more detail. I mean, there are certain books, some of them on the land economy prospective student reading list, which kind of everybody associated with land economy will have read and is really familiar with. So do be prepared to kind of talk about the book. Don't just lie and say that you've read it.
Yeah.
So that's kind of a couple of kind of practical things I would suggest.
Nice. That was really good advice. And if someone's like worried that, I don't know, I guess like there's an idea that if you go into a Cambridge interview, it's going to be really, really academic, and they're going to ask you questions that you like on like really advanced stuff. Like, which are all myths, by the way, but will students be asked anything or on content they haven't learned yet?
So I think, in short, yes, but it will be kind of like a guided process.
Okay.
So, for instance, if a student has never studied law in any kind of formal setting in their life, there might be kind of a question based on kind of some kind of legal topic
Yeah.
within the interview, but it will be kind of like guided through. So
Yeah.
the interviewers will be kind of very careful to kind of introduce it in a very kind of basic foundational way, and then they'll kind of define any terms or definitions that you would need, and then from that point onwards, it's really just kind of in the students' kind of remit to kind of talk through it, to kind of basically put their thoughts into the discussion. And I think if there's a certain way that the academics kind of want it to go, then they will guide you. But I think, yeah, the most important thing to kind of stress is that there's no need to be kind of worried about it being, like you say, overly formal, overly like technical.
Yeah.
It really is just a discussion. Because I think ultimately, if a student is successful at kind of coming to Cambridge Land Economy, there's going to be lots and lots of things that they're going to be introduced to for kind of the first time. And it's just about how you sort of deal with that and how you kind of approach a kind of new problem or like a new topic. So I would say try and think about it more as like a conversation rather than a really strict interview.
Nice. So I'm right in thinking it's not like a knowledge test. So if there's anything that the interviewers think you might not know, but they want to talk about, that they'll guide you through the things that you don't know, and then some questions in a conversation would emerge from that topic.
Yeah, that's like exactly it. It's really ultimately nothing to do with kind of your specific knowledge of land economy topics, but rather kind of your motivation to study. So, I think it would be a bit strange to apply to land economy if you have like no interest and no knowledge in the kind of law and economics.
Yeah.
But I think kind of if you've just seen into kind of like these subjects a little bit and you're like really interested and you sort of want to know more and you've chosen it as like a subject you want to study at uni, then, be prepared to talk about that and be prepared to kind of like tackle some kind of questions kind of around that.
Nice. And at Cambridge, we're recording this at 2025. Are interviews in person or online?
So it's a mix. So certain colleges do everything online, certain colleges do everything in person, and certain colleges kind of do a bit of both. Again, it's one of those things that I probably wouldn't worry too much about when students are choosing a college, because ultimately, regardless of whether it happens kind of on Zoom, online, or in person here in Cambridge, it's still going to be exactly the same format. It's going to be the same kind of type of conversation. So I think there are perhaps more important reasons for choosing a certain college over another. But equally, if you think that you perform really well in person, maybe choose one of those colleges that does kind of purely in person. But yeah, I wouldn't like think about it too much, basically.
Nice. Yeah, and we can put a link in the caption of has all from the university website, having a list of the colleges that are doing their interviews online or in person, or a mixture as well. And lastly, because I imagine with land economy, there's no A-level requirements, so lots of students will be coming from different academic backgrounds. How does the course um, make sure that everyone is up to speed and kind of on a similar level playing field?
Yes, I think the degree is like structured in a way to make sure that kind of no one's left behind in a sense. So, for instance, if you haven't taken a maths A level and you're kind of maybe a little bit further behind the rest of the cohort in terms of your quantitative skills, there is kind of maths refresher content in the first year just to make sure everyone's brought up to the same speed in the maths that is relevant to that land economy degree. Equally, if you've never studied law in your life, then you're going to be kind of guided through those kind of basic principles of law that you're going to need throughout the degree. And then I think it's worth just mentioning as well how kind of the support network in terms of your academic teaching is kind of really, really kind of well resourced here at Cambridge. So not only will you have kind of your formal lectures in with kind of the rest of your cohort with your kind of core modules in your first year, but you'll also have kind of small group teaching within college with kind of one or a couple of students discussing a topic with an academic. And so I think those kind of sessions where you get kind of that small group teaching is a really good place to kind of ask questions about topics that you are unfamiliar with or that you're struggling with or that you want to know more about and which you might not have studied at A level. So I think there's lots of scope to kind of tackle these subjects which you kind of might not have encountered before.
Nice. Yeah, and I'm sure that's very reassuring for a lot of people listening. And it is true that there's so much teaching provided and opportunities provided for students if they were to do their degree at Cambridge, especially with the supervisions as well. Well, thank you, Sam. I think that's the end, unless there's anything else you wanted to say.
Just one more thing, which is that we are changing the name actually of our degree soon. So anyone who joins the course in 2027 onwards, so it's still a long way away, but we're changing the course name from the BA in Land Economy to the BA in Environment, Law and Economics, which is kind of an exciting change. But the course itself is staying exactly the same. The structure, the contents, the admissions procedure. It's just that this new name gives a kind of better summation of the degree. I think that will really help in terms of kind of employability and just kind of basically explaining what these students are doing.
Nice, yeah. Environment, law, and economics. At least personally, I think it sounds like a really good title and really clear on what the students learn, and it would be very clear to employers. Well, thank you, Sam, for a really interesting podcast on applying for land economy. If you're watching and you're interested in land economy, we have another podcast with one of our academics who talks more about the course of land economy and what it's like to study the course and what land economy is. So do check that out. I can put that in the caption. And we've got lots of playlists now on YouTube of the podcasts that we've done so far. So there's one on admissions advice and another one on interviews advice, podcasts on what life is like at Cambridge, and the last one is Cambridge admissions advice and subject specific content as well. So if you're interested in other courses outside of land economy, you can check that out too. So we'll see you guys next time.
Thank you.
Nice.